Morning all, packing up the tent. It is a frosty morning, but the sun's peeking over the horizon now. Should warm us up quick. Seen a few hare this morning, which is pretty cool. So rabbits aren't native, came over with the Normans, but hares are native to Britain. They turn up a lot in folklore, so it's always cool to see them. A couple of minutes ago came up close to one and I stopped on the trail and kind of stopped and regarded each other, and I sneakily got my phone out and tried to record it, but my early morning tired thumbs didn't actually tap record, so I only got a few seconds of it as it ran away. They are amazing creatures, and when you see them running you can really appreciate the difference in physiology between a rabbit and a hare. Speaking of hares and folklore, I think a lot of people might immediately think of Aostra, the Anglo-Saxon goddess, Germanic goddess, for whom Easter is named, and that's potentially where the Easter bunny comes from, because like a hare is her symbol, or at least that's what people associate with her now. The truth is that the hares only became associated with her kind of like in Brothers Grimm time, and there's no evidence from the original sources of her being associated with hares. In fact, we know very little about Aostra at all. She is mentioned by Bede, Beda as some people call him. If you've never read Bede, check it out. He wrote a history of England, sort of the establishment of England, from the point of view of the church. So it's called an ecclesiastical history. Excellent book, and really gives an amazing picture of what it was like when missionaries came to this island. And I've said this before, there's this bit in the Bible where Jesus talks about, you will be my witnesses. Was it Jerusalem, Judea, to the very ends of the earth? Can't remember quite the locations, but the end of it is to the very ends of the earth. And there was a point where this island was the very end of the earth, the last of the known world. Must have been pretty scary for those people. Of course, St. Aidan, St. Cuthbert, all these sort of Celtic tradition saints, of course Bede mentions them. A fantastic broken tree here. Must be hundreds of years old. Look. In here. All this fungus. Going up in the gaps, and then just an absolutely humongous one. It's incredible. Well, that was a creaky bridge. Something I always like to do when out walking is really pay attention to my senses. Sound wise, I've already gone on a bit about the birds. There's also the sound of water here, but smell wise, this stuff, wild garlic, there's been lots of it on this route. And, you know, it's got such a strong, pungent smell. It starts burning the nostrils after a while. I'm also paying attention to the feel of the air. So I'm in a slightly shaded spot at the moment, and that cool air on my skin is refreshing on such a sunny day. I think that paying attention to our senses, the way in which kind of we connect to the material world is, it's an important thing to develop. That's why when I'm out on a long hike, I don't have headphones on. I really want to be present with what's happening. Speaking of the sound of water, a little bit earlier, a pair of swans flew overhead, made absolutely, their hooting noise. It's kind of a, I don't know how to describe it, but it's distinctive, isn't it? And just walking along, listening to different birds, starting to actually be able to pick a few different things out. I've said before, I don't really know from birds, but just walking around, seeing finches, listening to what they're doing. Near the water, there's some coal tits. They seem to like the river. Listening to what they sound like. Then there's the nightingales. Even saw some sparrows in a hedgerow. Not the most exciting of creatures, because they're so common. All these birds are common, aren't they? But I like sparrows. They just feel homely, and reminds me of a story that Bede tells about when Northumbria was being when missionaries came to Northumbria. And they came to the king and told him about this Jesus guy that they believed in. And, they were like, might be quite good if you believe in him too. So this was generations preceding St. Cuthbert. And one of the king's advisors tells a story of a sparrow. He says words to the effect of, it seems to me that this life is like a sparrow in winter, flying amongst this kind of cold, dark, dead landscape, and it flies in through the door of the hall. If you imagine a mead hall from Anglo-Saxon times, and for that brief moment there's the heat and lights from the fire, the sound of music and people feasting, and it's kind of bright and warm for a moment till it flits out the door on the other side. And the advisor says that basically that's what life is like, this moment of brightness surrounded by darkness and cold. And he advises basically, if this new doctrine can teach us anything more about this life, then it's worth following. I've got the words wrong, but that's the gist of it. It's a very famous story. I'm just having to make do with, while I'm walking, kind of with my half-remembered things, not quoting properly. You're just going to have to forgive me for that. There was a story about the King of Northumbria in the generations before St. Cuthbert. And it was kind of this like, they went back and forth whether they followed or not. And it was the Synod of Whitby. It was St. Cuthbert's influence in joining the traditions, these different Christian traditions, that really led to Christianity firmly taking hold in the region. A little bit of history for you. Okay, I headed up to that woodland. We've got to cross over this stone wall. There's these really cool stone steps here. Now, if I was like a YouTuber, I'd set the phone up and I'd go over, and then I'd come back and pick up the camera. But I'm not a YouTuber. I'm here to walk, so I'm not doing any more pick my phone down, putting the camera down to record me doing something. I'm just going to bring you with me. Wait. And I think a bird's been sitting on this post. So, this is Cessford Castle, stronghold of the Kerrs. Approaching the end of day 2. Amazing views. Almost 400 meters up. So the high points are not all that high. It still works though, doesn't it? Today has been real difficult. So this section this morning till about 2 o'clock, when I got into the little village of Moorbattle, and for a big part of that, all I could think about was my feet, because I've got blisters on both feet. Thankfully, I was able to stop and kind of sort them out a little bit, but still pretty painful. And Not sure what it's going to look like tomorrow. Never mind, eh? Look at that. So yeah, tough day. This is the halfway point of St. Cuthbert's Way. It's also the highest point unless you go up the hills, and we went up the hills. So it's not the highest point for us. It's really pretty. I mean, we can't ask for much more than that. It's absolutely beautiful. I was trying to think, earlier on I was reflecting as I was walking, and the sun was high and it was really, really hot. Going between kind of bits of farmland and open ground into trees, and then out again, and then into trees. And I began to be really thankful when a little woodland turned up, because it meant I could be in the shade. And whenever an arrow was pointing out across open land, I was like, oh, this is going to be hot. And then, you know, when you see one of those wayfinding arrows pointing you into trees, it felt like such a little gift. But then as you get higher, the wind picks up, you get that lovely cool breeze. So I was feeling pretty thankful today. However, there was a long period of time where I was just thinking about my feet. I was in an awful lot of pain. I've got some blisters on my feet that I think are going to continue to trouble me. But for a while, that was all I could think about, was the pain. And it really makes you appreciate how much for those that came before, people like St. Cuthbert, who went all around Scotland preaching to people, and to travelled between Melrose and Lindisfarne and Whitby and all these different places. What travelling must have been like in those times. It really is incredible.